Friends, I think you must realize how privileged I was to work with Vin Scully for 28 years. Best baseball announcer ever. Vin never wanted to write a book. We lost him 21 months ago. Tom Hoffarth, one of the most respected sports writers and sports columnists in Southern California for 4 decades, went to the Scully family a little over a year ago and said, "May I try to write something?" They said yes. And Tom has come out with a book, 251 pages, which is absolutely terrific about Vin. And we want Tom to join us right now. Mr. Hoffarth, how are you, sir?
I'm swell, Mr. Porter. It is so good to see you.
Well, I want to start one thing off here before we talk because I thought on the inside cover, you wrote what really should be related to everybody as we look at this. You said when Vin Scully passed away in 2022, the city of Los Angeles lost its soundtrack. If you were able to deliver a eulogy for him, what might it include? What impact did he have on you? What do you carry forward from his legacy? 67 essayists, one representing each season of his career calling games for the Los Angeles Dodgers from 1950 through 2016, reflect on the ways his professional and private life influenced them. The contributions include a range of stories and remembrances from those who knew and followed him. The consensus of the contributions is that Scully's actions spoke louder than his well-recognized words. This collection includes fellow broadcasters, as well as historians, players, journalists, celebrities, and others connected to the game of baseball, with each piece introduced by sports journalist Tom Hoffarth. Readers can consider Scully's life through common themes: his sincerity, his humility, his professionalism, his passion for his faith, his devotion to his family, his insistence on remembering and giving context to important moments in the history of not just the game, but the world in general, all wrapped up in a gift for weaving and storytelling with accurate reporting, fellowship with performance, art, humor, and connection. Tell us how this all started for you.
Oh my gosh, Ross, I wish you could do the audio version of the book. You just did a great job. Oh, well, it started for me, obviously, when I was born in Los Angeles. And I grew up, my mom was a huge Dodger fan. We had the games on all the time. So our soundtrack was Vin and Jerry, and then you and Don come in, and the evolution just keeps carrying on. And then I started a sports media column when I was at the Daily Breeze in the South Bay, and then at the LA Daily News. And my first 30 years of Vin is really as a consumer, as a person who understands the game. And if you don't love baseball after listening to Vin describe it, then something's wrong with you.
Yeah.
And then the next 30 years was as a professional sports writer and getting to sit with him and talk to him. 1992, I think, was the first time I sat down with an interview with him, and it was the 30th anniversary Dodger Stadium. And he's going on and telling me all the top 10 moments at that time. And obviously Kirk Gibson was just still fresh in everyone's mind, but so was Dennis Martinez's perfect game. And then Vin just describing the emotions of this man who had climbed this mountain and performed this feat. And so as I spent 30 years doing interviews with him for my column, I just collected these audio tapes and interviews and notes and things. I never threw anything away. I just kept this box. And when I was watching the Dodger game on August the 2nd, 2022, and Joe Davis and Jessica Mendoza came on the air and announced it, it was just this deep feeling of faith and prayer that I had, rather than thinking about, oh, we just lost a great broadcaster, we just lost a great storyteller. It was the man who you knew for so long, and the person I got to know by seeing him in church, seeing him with his family, seeing him call his wife from the press box before a game. And so I had these reflections, and I thought, as you said, Vin never wanted to write his own book. And I was talking to his wife, Sandy, for some time about trying to do a project that we could do something and help a charity for him, and so we just kept going back and forth. Then Sandy passed away, and so I stayed in contact with some of his children, Aaron and Kat and Kevin. And then it was when he passed away, I thought, well, maybe now is a time to start pulling my notes together and my interviews together. And I had to go out and find like another Sony micro recorder, because I had all these little tiny tapes that from years and years gone by, and I started to pull these things together, and I realized I had something, and I just started making notes, and I couldn't really figure out what to do. And I didn't want to do a biography on him because I felt like people sort of already know him, and Kurt Smith had done a biography of somewhat on him that, as we know, Vin wasn't real happy about. But
Was not happy at all.
right, but so that was done, and HBO had done a piece on him that he wasn't happy about either.
Oh, it wasn't at all.
So we knew people had tried this, and maybe it was just the fact that Vin had passed away, and his life as a public figure can be chronicled. And that's what happened. I think when I started reading the obituaries, all the people who knew him was just as the great broadcaster. And I said, there's so much more to know about him and to tell people. So as I started putting my notes together, I had a certain amount of material written, and I want to see if this is resonating with other people. So I started reaching out to people like you and Bob Costas and Al Michaels. And I was thinking, do you guys want to add something to this book? Because, what I have is great, but I think if you can sort of complement and amplify some of the things that it says here, we can figure out different chapters. And that's really what happened. So at the beginning of the book, we have him as the professional and the storyteller, and then the person who connected everybody together. And that's great. But I got 6 more chapters about his faith in his family, about his humility, about his inspirational ways. He inspired so many people to try broadcasting. And then I didn't even think about it, just how he lived his life. He was in Hollywood. He was a celebrity. He was in movies and TV and game shows. So how did that life work? And I reached out to my friends in the media, Pat Morrison and Chris Erskine and Dennis McCarthy, and all these people had these great experiences with him in interviews, and you as well. And it just kind of, it went together. And I swear I did not intend to have 67 essays in this book. It was completely karma, or wherever you want to say it. And the last one I got was from Bud Selig on the day that the book deadline was due, on June 1st, 2023. I plugged Bud Selig into the book, sent it off to the publisher, and they said, wait 10 months. We hope we can get it for opening day 2024. And they pretty much did. And so
why the University of Nebraska Press?
Well, I had a relationship with them over the years in book reviewing, and they've always done great jobs with baseball books. And that was just the first thing I thought of. But what I didn't really realize is they do really good academic books. Most of the books they do are from SABR members who love to do research and all this. And so my book, or the project I wanted to do, really wasn't an academic project. It was really more a personal feeling, emotional kind of thing. So I wasn't sure that they would take it, and I was ready to go to other publishers, but they had recently bought the rights to Kurt Smith's book. And more importantly, they just had this huge biography done on Red Barber by one of their, and so they felt that this would be kind of a nice package to work with. So the issue I had, and I didn't realize until I was, again, part of this 10-month plan of getting this book out, was they were editing it as if it was an academic book with footnotes and changing language and things. And I was going, you can't really do this. This is all people's essays. This is not a footnote reference kind of book. So they kind of backed off a little bit. They allowed me great room. Usually in a book like this, they put all the pictures in one place, right? And so they let me spread it out to each person. I wanted to put the biography of each person at the end of their essay to kind of help understand who it was, and they wanted to put it all in the back. So I had to do some compromises and things. And then and the end result, it said the book was edited by me, which it was, but I really wrote about a quarter of it. So, you know, you kind of go back and forth with that. And I think Ron Rapoport kind of summed it up nicely when I reached out to him for advice, because Ron had done books with the University of Nebraska. And he said, boy, I've always wanted to do a book with Vin. And so I started sending him chapters, and he said, oh, these are great. And he started pulling together, and I said, well, let's make this the forward. This is really kind of cool. And it just, again, it all fell into place. And I'm just so happy with the fact that some people who ordered it earlier are getting it now in the mail, and it's going to be out in bookstores for sure on May the 1st, but people are getting it. And we had a really good,
we're getting great reviews from
yeah,
our people on our sports site who have
yeah.
gotten it. And I've got to tell you that you were kind enough to give me 3.5 pages of it here, of the 251.
And a
And
great
I have a
photo.
little story about this that I've not told before.
Sure.
In 2011, I was about to make a deal with a cable show, and I thought having Vin on would be just terrific. And he agreed to do it. And we went over to the Calabasas Country Club one morning, and I sat down with him and did the interview. And he said to me when it was over, now, I don't want you to use this unless you're going to do that show, because I've had some problems in the past with people who tried to sneak things by me. So can you believe that for 13 years, I held that interview for you?
Oh, my
And
goodness.
then I did it word for word. And I was very grateful that you gave me an opportunity to put that all in there.
Well, you had so many insights. I mean, just from the fact he loved applesauce to the fact he was once asked to be, you know, the governor of California for a party he wasn't even affiliated with. So you had all this insight that was just so cool. But you also got the part about who he was as a man, and who he doesn't want to be remembered as a broadcaster as much as a man. And that's when I think it resonated with me that for as much as we loved him as a broadcaster, he was probably a bigger person, and his actions really did speak louder.
Did the 67 essayists in 67 years of his broadcast, was that a coincidence, or did you have that figured out?
That was absolutely a coincidence. And it was, I didn't even realize it until I had the last one done. And then I felt like something is guiding this thing to get done at this time with these people, because I'd reached out to many, many people, and a lot of them have an aversion to writing. So I understood that. So I would interview them, and I would craft a thing for them. Some of them didn't even want to do that part of it. They didn't have the time. So I said, well, let me find things that you've said about Ben, and let me craft it and then send it to you. And they would approve that. And so it happened in so many different ways that I really wanted writers to write, because that's what they love to do, and they have great language. Broadcasters, I mean, even like Vin didn't, I don't think necessarily like to write anything except his prolific ability to write thank you notes to people.
Yeah.
And they were handwritten notes, and I have a few, and so many people wanted to share those. So those are in the book as well, from Fred Clare and from other people who just had these beautiful handwritten notes, and the beautiful penmanship you could see from the nuns who allowed him to write left-handed and not crack him over with the ruler too much.
I wonder how you chose 67 people.
It started off with just people I thought could lend background in history, and then they would say, well, Bob Costas would say, do you want to talk to this producer who worked with him? And so I did. When I got a hold of Peter O'Malley, he said, you really need to talk to Bruce Framing. And Bruce did a great story too about how Ben met him at a watering hole once in Houston, and said, you know, Bruce, I wish you would do better signals on balls and strikes. And Bruce didn't even know that, and they formed a great relationship.
Yeah.
And then Peter said, you know, you should talk to this guy Tom Volante, was Vin's first producer. And I was thinking, where, in LA? No, in Brooklyn. This guy's 95 years old and he's still around, and he was so great telling stories. He worked with Red Barber and Vin.
Right.
And so he told that whole story, and that's in the book. And it was just this ripple effect that the more people I asked, the more people who wanted to do things. And then I wanted some diversity. I didn't want it to just be, the sort of all the regular people you think about. So at some point I really kicked away from the more recognizable people, and I went to some people who you might not know, and those who touched him, and it turns out, taught him the language. I have a friend who works as a reporter for CNN, Paul Verkamen, very thick Belgian heritage, and Vin taught him to speak the language better, so he became a professional broadcaster as a newscaster. And then it just, all these stories had these great interaction, and I couldn't be more pleased to how it fell together, and I really felt it was some divine guidance to getting it done.
Did you put on tape all 67 essayists, or did you take longhand on some of them?
It depended on where they were. I think maybe a quarter of them wrote something, and then I have maybe 30 or so audio clips of the other people. And as I'm getting their approval, I love to share them with you for your website. I think we've got Steve Garvey and Jessica Mendoza already, and there's some other ones I'd love to share. And it's really, it's just an extended interview that gets boiled down to these essays. So I think if you're like me, you have on your phone message machine some calls that Vin would have left a message, and you just are thankful that you didn't pick up the phone.
Yeah.
And so
Done that.
and so I have those clips. I don't know what really to do with, but maybe we can use those somewhere too to help sort of explain, because they're interesting conversations, and most of them aren't about sports at all.
No.
And I'll tell you one quick story too. Was earlier this week I did a Zoom class meeting with a USC journalism class, and the topic is about sports, pop culture, and communications. And Dan Durbin is the USC professor. He did one of the essays for the book, and he has me on the Zoom class. And as I see all the pictures of names of people pop up, there's this one person named Will Scully, and I go, "Oh, that's interesting." So as Professor Durbin is talking me through some questions just like this, he asked me about what did the family think about the book, and I said, "Well, I want to stop for a second here. I want to see if this lad you have in your class might be related." And he pops his video on, and I see him, and he explains that he's Vin's grandson, and he's
Oh,
the son of Vin's son, Kevin. And I just was just a moment to catch myself. That was so, what was so meaningful was he said, "Everything you've said up to this point is very meaningful to me, and I really appreciate it." And that's all I needed to know, is that the family was okay with this. I'm not trying to make any big splash. I'm not trying to make a name for myself. I really just want everybody to share on these stories. And he offered a great story too. I wish I could use somehow in the book. He said, "My grandfather's favorite sport was football." So
yeah.
he goes, "I just want you to know, sometimes baseball even bored him." So he loved the football. And one of the last conversations I had with Vin, he was watching some English soccer, and he just loved to hear the announcers go back and forth talking about the play of the game. And I asked him, "Would you ever have wanted to call soccer?" And go, "Oh no, I don't know enough about the sport." And I said, "Yeah, but there's all that dead time. Wasn't that great time to tell stories?" He goes, "They don't want to hear stories about soccer. They want to know all the technical things." And I go, "Well, enjoy it," because it was just a treasure to hear him talk about different things. I loved his golf coverage too, by the way. It was so,
Oh,
to me,
yeah.
so meaningful. And that fit into the chapter about humility, because golf is such a humbling sport. And it kind of gave me an entry point into talk about how he could talk about a golfer, because we all had this shared experience of humility.
Tom, I don't know whether I put this in the book, but he told me one time that he belonged to Bill Our Country Club, and he loved golf, as you say. And he out one day, and on the 10th hole, which is a par three, his drive went out of bounds. Put the ball down, hit the next one, it went in the hole. He said, just another par three. Next.
You did include that.
Did
And
I?
that is such the perfect example of how everybody would have been bragging about a hole in one. He knew, nope, on the scorecard, that's a 3. You
So
don't
how do you
cheat.
go from here with this now?
Oh, we've got some other book projects with different bookstores and things. And I really want this to grow organic, word of mouth, without trying to be, all showy about it and everything. So I really just enjoy the conversations with people. I enjoy going to book events. And the first thing I asked was, did you ever get to meet Vin and what was your experience like? And it just gives people this opportunity to talk about, maybe they just met him once, but obviously they felt they've known him for their lifetime.
Did
And then
anybody turn you down?
not really. It was mostly, if they did, it was just because they didn't have enough time to do it. It was a very quick turnaround.
Hmm.
So I understood the limitations on some things, but nobody really said no. It was just me trying to collect more people. And the 2 people I really got as a surprise were the actors Bryan Cranston and Harry Shearer. Harry Shearer did a lot of Vin imitations on either Saturday Night Live or for The Simpsons. So Harry was really interesting to talk to. And so I like cashed in all these credits that I've had with people over the years, and I think that's really what made it work. So nobody wanted. Nobody. I think more people will want to keep adding to this. So I've set up a website called Vin Scully appreciationbook.com. And when I get that up and running, we'll be able to let people post any kind of remembrance and things too. But like you said in the beginning, this was really giving us a chance to give a eulogy. And because his funeral was so small and family, there wasn't a lot of that. So, but people really need to sort of explain what they took away from him and what resonates.
Tom, I can't tell everybody how good this is. Perfect eloquence. And once you start on it, you can't put it down. And congratulations on what you put out. And I'm also very pleased to hear that you went to the Scully family to ask really for permission to do this.
They gave me their blessing, and I appreciated that.
Tom, always good to talk to you, my friend.
Great to see you, Ross. My mom says hi. She's
wonderful. Tell her hi in return.
I will very much. Thank you so much.
Tom Hoffarth, author. We'll pick up his book. Where's the best place for him to get it?
Pretty much any store. It's available everywhere starting May 1st, but it's also on wherever you get books. It's available everywhere.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Ross.